Hi everyone, this is Dr. Razify. In today's lab, we're gonna study plant evolution. I'm recording 3 lectures. In the first lecture, I'm going to talk about why we study plants. In the second lecture, I will give you an overview of plant evolution. And in the third one, I will talk about an exercise that you will do in today's lab. So this is a cartoon from the New Yorker, and it was circulated a lot on Twitter and other social media. And I keep thinking about this. It's a very interesting cartoon. In this cartoon, there is a CEO who's explaining to children that yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. And I always think about this because we know that there are a lot of CEOs out there that they're just trying to make their companies profitable no matter what, and no matter what happens to the environment. So, and their major goal is just to make value for the investors. But what I think about is, can we really have a healthy economy when the planet is destroyed? So here I'm showing the chart of S&P 500, which is kind of like the average of the stock market. And you see that in just a couple of weeks, there has been a huge crash and trillions of dollars were lost due to COVID-19 in stock market. And this is an example of how vulnerable the economy is to things that happen to our environment. So one disease alone can wipe out a lot of gains. This news article is from NPR, and it shows that in just a couple of weeks, 10 years of job growth was just wiped out, and we are seeing record high unemployment rates. So can we have a healthy economy when the planet is gone? So back to the cartoon, for me the answer is no, because the economy is dependent on a healthy environment and human population. So why we study plants? For me, when I think about this question, several things come to my mind. One of the most important things is curiosity. The other one is that plants are key elements of the environment, and they're important for climate stability as well as economy and culture. And I will briefly talk about each of these topics. Curiosity. Throughout history, humans have been curious about the universe. We wanted to know what's in the deep sea, what's in other planets, and what's in deep parts of wild forests, and so on. And when we are young, we are very curious. We want to explore everything. We are kind of born natural scientists. But as we grow up, many of us lose that curiosity because the society tells us that we need to focus on wealth accumulation or getting a job to pay back our student loans and so on. But some people keep their curiosity alive, and if they're lucky, then they become scientists. Plants are key elements of the environment. Many animals depend on plants as their food source. Giraffes, deer, moose, and so many other insects and other species depend on plants for food. And animals also depend on plants for their nest, shelter, and a place to hide, as you see in these pictures. Plants are also important for climate stability. Oxygen is produced through photosynthesis. Through the process of photosynthesis, plants take in carbon dioxide and use water to produce oxygen while fixing carbon dioxide to produce food. And you might have seen these graphs in biology textbooks where we have what's called light reactions and dark reactions, where in light reactions, the sun's energy is absorbed to split water into oxygen and protons, and then the protons are used to produce ATP, which is used later in dark reactions to fix carbon dioxide. And in this pathway, there is a very important enzyme that is called Rubisco that is involved in fixing carbon dioxide. Plant transpiration is also very important for climate stability, and by releasing water vapor into the air, they regulate the temperature around them and they create a microclimate. So through the process of plant transpiration, water is absorbed into the roots and then moved upward and into the leaves, and on the leaves and other parts of the plants, they have what's called a stomata, which can open and release water vapor into the air. And by doing that, they create the water movement inside the plant, which is also important for the plant itself, because through this movement, the plants are able to absorb water and nutrients from the soil. Plants are also very important for economy. Fun fact, Canada is the only country on earth with a plant on its flag. I might be wrong about that, so please fact check, but I read that somewhere, but I can't remember where right now. The reason there is a maple leaf on Canada's flag is that maple syrup is very important for Canada's economy. Beer is produced from plants, from sprouted wheat and other grains. There's a plant called hops, which is important for flavoring beer. So it's used for flavoring beer. Tequila is produced from agave. Corn whiskey is produced from corn. Coffee and tea are some really important examples. I myself cannot function without drinking several cups of coffee in the morning and tea in the afternoon. And I've told you all before that I really like drinking yerba mate in the afternoons. Dates are very important for the Middle Eastern economy. In Iran, we have also pistachios and saffron. And we Iranians think that our saffron is the best, but recently I met a Spanish scholar who argued with me that their saffron is the best. So we decided to test whose saffron is the best. So this is not a real scientific example. Obviously, there are not enough technical and biological replicates here, but just for the fun of it, we did this, and we had a negative control, and we used equal amounts of Iranian and Spanish saffron and poured hot water over them. And obviously, the Iranian one won. So let's talk about the economic value of crops. This is data from FAO from 2017. It's showing what the global value of crops are. The medicinal plants have several hundred billions of dollars in value. And rice is kind of the boss of all crops with $337 billion in value. And wheat and soybean and tomatoes, sugar cane and corn, potatoes, grapes, and apples. And I included Apple Company here for comparison because with all the talk about Apple Company and how big it is, how great it is, it's still less important than many crops. For example, tomatoes are more valuable than Apple Company in terms of annual revenue. Apple itself is almost as valuable, or slightly less valuable than Apple Company. This is a chart that shows where different crops have originated. In North America, blueberries, squash, and strawberries, and sunflower, and some other plants. And it's a very interesting graphic that I think gives you an idea about where different crops have evolved. Plants are very important for our culture. When I talked about the economical value of plants, we should also consider that they are important for our culture. When I visited New York City for the first time, I noticed that in many apartments, people are growing plants. Sometimes giant trees are coming up in front of people's apartments, and I was really surprised how they can grow big plants like trees in apartments like that. But the other thing that I thought about was how nostalgic people seem to be about the natural environment, because in big cities there is very little space for parks and natural environments. So people seem to want to bring that back into their lives, even in a very small space. Obviously, plants are very important for poetry. In almost any poem, you might see a plant being represented. This is a poem by Robert Frost. It's called Tree at My Window. It's my wife's favorite poem, so that's why I included it here. Again, this is another poem that I made for you all. And many holidays and traditions around the world revolve around food, with plants as the major element. Thanksgiving, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, Ramadan, Nowruz, Chinese New Year, Dia de Muertos, and so many other holidays. When you think about them, food is very important for those holidays, and plants are a major element of the food that is served on those holidays. Before I finish this part of today's lecture, I want to talk about the impact of a meat-heavy diet on the planet. This is a picture that shows Amazon deforestation. And recently I heard about how a lot of Amazon is being deforested so that they can create fields for producing grain that is ultimately fed to livestock. So in a way, meat consumption can contribute to Amazon deforestation. And I wanted to show you this article, which is kind of a case for encouraging people for eating more plants. It was published in Science, and they modeled the population growth and food availability and different scenarios in which we can sustain the population growth and feed everybody. And they concluded that only one scenario succeeds among all the scenarios that they tested. And that scenario is if everyone starts eating plants 100% of the time. In other words, let's all be vegans. And I know that it's very difficult for a lot of people to completely switch to a plant-based diet, but I can use this opportunity to make a plea that even if you can't be 100% vegan, at least you can reduce your meat consumption. That's it with the first part of today's lecture. In the second part, I will give you an overview of plant evolution. And in the third part, I will talk about an exercise that we will do today.